So I have a question for you guys. One, do we live in the patriarchy? And if so, and I want everybody to respond, do we live in the patriarchy? And if so, is the patriarchy good or bad? We'll start with Farah, come this way, and then we'll have Michael.
I think it's such semantics at this point. As of now, I'm going to say I don't think we necessarily live in a patriarchy. Do I think women are marginalized in a disproportionate way in relation to men? 100%. But would I use the term patriarchy as a blanket term? Not necessarily.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how a person is defining patriarchy.
Well, let's maybe start off by defining patriarchy.
Okay. If we're defining patriarchy as a system of power where men uphold most of governance and social power, I would say that there is an argument to be made that we currently live in a patriarchy. Whether that's good or I personally am of the thought that that's bad, but yeah, it depends on what definition you guys want to use. I'm open to it.
Do you guys concur with her definition of patriarchy?
Can you repeat it? Sorry.
Basically, it's a system of power where men hold
most of the capital.
Yes,
the social.
basically,
Yeah,
most
yeah.
of the capital, social, political power.
So obviously we know historically this is true, and if we're looking at a global level, are we going to like refine it to like United States, because these are going to be very different conversations.
And West, we could also
in the
consider
West. So I would say like, and you see this, that like it's more prevalent in countries that are poorer, that have less technological advancement, as industrial machinery became a thing, and education and all that. And so now I don't think like in the West, I'm not going to sit here and say like women don't have equal rights. I think some of that history in certain ways, like in maybe culture and our perception of men and women is still here, but no. And I would say that it hurts men and women to the same degree in some ways. Yeah, I would say that.
Okay, so Farah, you don't think that there's a patriarchy, or are you unsure?
I think the word patriarchy is a bit harsh, and I don't know if I would apply it to how we live in the West now.
Okay, but you two do believe there's an
argument to be made depending on what level you're talking about when it comes to power, or how much power you have to establish patriarchy.
Michael.
I guess I kind of think more than you do that we live in a patriarchy, not as a matter of law.
Yeah.
The law says we don't. The law, if anything, is inverted. We're closer to a matriarchy, except we don't have kids anymore, so there are fewer mothers. But as a matter of practical living, I think we still do live in a patriarchy. I think men wield probably more power than we ever did. It's just in a very perverted way. So men, wield the power to have casual hookups. Women statistically tend to not prefer casual hookups. Men tend to like them quite a lot more, and women prefer a longer lasting relationship.
That's what I would agree with. I think
marriage,
that's what I meant by cultural currency. I think men have the monopoly on like the cultural zeitgeist, and then women move in lockstep to like men's desires and the male gaze. So I would agree with that.
Yeah.
In terms of politically, I don't know if I would agree as much, but I agree with that definition.
Totally. And so, the irony though is that all of that sexual revolution came about because of feminism. But it didn't really give women, I think, what they thought they were going to get. I think if anything, it gave men more power. I remember thinking about this many years ago when I was in college, and the hookup culture was really burgeoning. I thought, is this the greatest trick that men ever played on women? That these women who call themselves feminists think that they're going to be empowered by letting men just use them whenever they want and then cast them aside and go sleep with some other woman. Girl power.
I completely agree, and I actually don't think women are the culprit or feminists are the culprit today of hookup culture. I think it's more like neocons, tradcons, pickup artists, the one who says that you need to unpack the female psyche by like...
Traditionalists don't support hookup culture at all.
And I think
say as a proud traditionalist.
Yeah, I would say that also there's a distinction between the moral question, like if you're a woman and you hook up, like that's part of what the sexual revolution was there to do, is to give women autonomy, to be able to consent to things, to not have a scarlet letter, just attached to them forever because they decided to do a hookup. And then the other question is it healthy? No, not the same.
Of course they do.
If you look at social attitudes,
called a 304.
Yeah, but if you look at social attitudes in the last 20 years on things like casual sex, basically it's moving in this direction. The whole reason you have a show is because most people think like me and you have something to fight against.
I don't think so. I think I have a really popular show because a lot of people are living under our cultural zeitgeist, but they realize that it's wrong. And
Some people, but if you look at polling and stuff, especially if you look at where like the institutional power is, like in media and academia and stuff, like we have that power. We definitely influence the culture. And if you look at polling and you look at like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, how people felt about casual sex. So I agree that there's a moral question and what's actually good for you. And the truth is there is a small number of people, like women tend to have more restricted sociosexuality than men do, but there are some women.
What do you mean by sociosexuality?
Sociosexuality is how open you are to casual relationships. There's like an inventory, and they like look at your desire, your behavior, your attitudes towards it, and men typically are more open to it than women are. But there is some like, there's like 10% or 5% of women who still, and I don't think there's anything wrong with those women going out and doing that. But I do think we need to put more of an emphasis on like, okay, the moral question, whether you're a whore if you do this, that's separate from, is this good for you? Is this going to make you feel good? Is this what you really want?
Is it separate?
I think it's separate.
Why would it be separate? If morality is concerned with what is right and what is wrong, and we are rational beings that recognize that some things are better than other things, then wouldn't it stand to reason that if you do more good things and fewer bad things, if you pursue more virtue and less vice, that you would be happier and flourish?
Maybe, but is eating a donut immoral?
It depends if you've had like 5 donuts already.
Well,
then
we just have
probably
a different, like to me, I don't think like eating fast food is immoral. It may not be good for you, but it's not immoral. And there isn't like this stigma associated with it where it's like, oh, nobody, like,
No, sex is obviously, I think, even more fundamental to human nature than donuts are. And I like donuts plenty. But, sex is very, very important to human nature.
That's true.
In part because the action is what propagates the species, or in our sterile age, does not propagate the species. But, you're a trained lawyer. Passed the bar exam, and you have spoken publicly about how because you've made other career choices, you really can't work in the law. A firm would fire you. So it would seem to me, putting aside the justice or injustice of that fact, that there is still a major stigma associated with
But a lot of firms would actually hire me over you, probably still in 2020.
Well, I don't have a law degree.
No, but my point is that some of the things you say are so controversial that with how I think I saw a little bit clip of your last thing where you said like Yale would like deny you even went there.
I think they want to burn my diploma.
That's my point.
That's a very liberal place.
Is that society is shifting and we're becoming more okay with things like sex work, but we're still not there 100%. But we still are very quick to cancel misogyny, and I'm not agreeing with this.
I wouldn't say Yale is representative of the broader society, though. It's a kind of, and I love my alma mater.
If we're talking about law firms, if we're talking about good like big time law firms, like they would have a harder time.
Wait, just a clarifying question. So you're thinking, broadly speaking, people will find a conservative political pundit more objectionable than
in academia,
I totally agree.
In academia, in higher education, and in like corporate America,
Okay, I think you're probably right about that. Tells you a lot about the society.
Yeah, you can argue that, but to say like there are firms out there that would still take me over you.
But in reality, look, I mean, it's a funny line, and there is a lot of truth to that. But a lot of these videos that go viral from this show, in fact, and in the broader like red pill manosphere stuff, it's women who are being shamed for their sexual behaviors. Putting the justice or injustice of that aside for a second, those videos get a lot of views. Those attitudes are still very, very prevalent. And I think it's because no amount of feminist indoctrination is going to alter basic aspects of human nature. And I think men broadly don't want their wives to be promiscuous. And look, everybody has a past, and I think there's all sorts of redemption and repentance, and I think that can all be great. But no one, as La Rochefoucauld said, hypocrisy is the tribute vice pays to virtue. No one, I think, really deeply desires that, and I don't.
The men who watch the show are going to selection bias there because they're going to be more likely to not desire that. They're probably going to spend more time on the internet. There's all these.
It's a very popular show, though.
But like this idea that men want a body count of 0 is not really replicated, I think, in normal society. That like you may not, they may not like you. Obviously, there's a spectrum here. Like your girl doing porn is different than having 3 bodies, right? Like different, there's gonna be different levels of men who are okay with one and not the other, but we do have a culture war for a reason because there is enough people on this side who are like, actually there's nothing wrong with having casual sex, actually there's nothing whatever about doing OnlyFans. And I think tradcons can be super happy living a tradcon life, but you guys are the ones telling us we can't be happy and there's nobody out here on our side.
No, look, we're observing certain facts of society and mentioning them, and but also we're recognizing that the liberal view of society, that we're all just individuals and don't yuck my young man, that doesn't really work because we live in society. So I keep bringing up the trans thing because it's just the clearest example of all these different topics we're talking about. The pro-trans argument was, just let me dress up in a skirt. How does it bother you? I'm doing it in the privacy of my own home. Stop yucking my yum. Okay, fine. Okay, well, if I'm going to wear a skirt, you're going to call me Shelley. All right, Steve, I'll call you Shelley, fine, whatever. oh, okay, and if you're going to call me Shelley and I'm going to wear a skirt, then I'm going to go use the women's bathroom. Now, hold on, Steve. Sorry, Shelley. Like, you can't, my daughter goes into the women's bathroom. Well, I'm a woman and I say I'm a woman. You have no damn right to say that I'm not a woman. Well, no, I do have a right to say you're not a woman. I do have a right to suggest that you not behave like a weirdo in public. And I do have a right to say you get out of my daughter's bathroom because I've got faculties of reason and I live in society. And to quote John Stuart Mill, who's one of the most important liberal thinkers of all time, in his essay on liberty, he points out, we want a lot of protections for privacy, but there are not really any totally private vices. If a guy is just a big drunk and he just drinks all the time, maybe he does it in his own home and it doesn't bother you, but then maybe he neglects his family and his family can't eat, and then maybe he doesn't go to his job, and maybe he doesn't pay his taxes, and maybe he doesn't contribute to the community that he lives in. And maybe we have a right in the political community to put some limits on individual autonomy because it's degrading to individuals, and you get all the individuals together, that's your society.
Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of want to push back on the idea that, like, basically being trans is the same as being a drunkard. And I think the reason why is because
I'm not saying they're the same. They're just both similar. A bit deviant and suffer defects of will and intellect.
Okay, I guess my question to you is, when does something deviant become harmful? Because there's a lot of deviant behaviors out there. I don't think most of them are harmful. I don't think most of them are bad. But obviously you think that there's something bad about being trans and being drunk enough to, like, do the analogy. So my question is, when does deviance become harmful?
And do you believe it should be enforced through law, or are you just talking social? Like, do you think, like, we should put in, because there's a lot of rights that we hold up even when they're like free speech, people say mean words, but we still are like, the right is so important. Guns, they
sometimes we have limits on speech.
Of course, I think I agreed with everything you said. There should be limits. The question is, where should those limits be and how should they be enforced? And that's my question.
We should probably arrive at them through prudence and very carefully.
Okay.
I don't think there's like a write 5 bullet points on a napkin answer to this, as some ideologues do. I think we have prudence for a reason, and it's the my dear, it's the consummate political virtue. But also, when you say should it be enforced through social norms or through the law, I'm not sure there's a total firm distinction here. It's very fashionable of the libertarians to say politics is totally downstream of culture. So, sure, that's true in as far as it's true. But also the law is a tutor. And so the law creates certain incentives and disincentives. If you're going to punish certain behaviors, you're actually going to get less of that behavior. And if you encourage certain behavior, you're going to get more of that behavior.